Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyakva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchantyanāmayam karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyakva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchantyanāmayam karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchantyanāmayam
karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyakva manishinaha janma bandha vinimukta padam gacchantyanāmayam.
Anyone else? Ladies?
Karmajam buddhi yukta hi phalam tyaktva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmukta padam gacchantyanāmayam.
Karmajam, due to fruitive activities, buddhi yuktaha, being engaged in devotional service, he, certainly, phalam, results, tyaktva, giving up, manishinaha, great sages or devotees, janma bandha, from the bondage of birth and death, vinirmuktaha, liberated, padam, position, gachanti, they reach, anamayam, without miseries. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. Purport. The liberated living entities belong to that place where there are no material miseries. The Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 58 says, Samashritaye padapallava plavam mahat padam punya yasho murare bhavam budhir vatsa padam param padam yad vipadam natesham. For one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Mukunda, or the giver of Mukti, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's footprint. Param Padam, or the place where there are no material miseries, or Vaikuntha, is his goal. Not the place where there is danger at every step of life. Owing to ignorance, one does not know that this material world is a miserable place where there are dangers at every step. Out of ignorance, only less intelligent persons try to adjust to the situation by fruitive activities, thinking that the resultant actions will make them happy. They do not know that no kind of material body anywhere within the universe can give life without miseries. The miseries of life, namely birth, death, old age, and diseases, are present everywhere within the material world. But one who understands his real constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord, and thus knows the position of the personality of Godhead, engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Consequently, he becomes qualified to enter into the Vaikuntha planets, where there is neither material, miserable life, nor the influence of time and death. To know one's constitutional position means to know also the sublime position of the Lord. One who wrongly thinks that the living entity's position and the Lord's position are on the same level is to be understood to be in darkness, and therefore unable to engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. He becomes a Lord himself and thus paves the way for repetition of birth and death. But one who understanding that his position is to serve, transfers himself to the service of the Lord, at once becomes eligible for Vaikuntha Loka. Service for the cause of the Lord is called Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, or in plain words, devotional service to the Lord. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksharunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadamikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahavana Raghunathamritam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahavana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitamscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm very happy to be back in Manchester after 1 year. And nice to see so many of you on this Sunday afternoon. It's the best possible way to spend a Sunday afternoon, or for that example, a Monday afternoon, or a Tuesday afternoon, or a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday afternoon. Any day and every day is good for Krishna consciousness. Generally in this world we see there are specific days for specific activities. So there are days on which you go to work, there are days on which certain events happen, but in Krishna consciousness it's an everyday activity. There is no day which is a holiday from Krishna consciousness, but every day is a holy day for Krishna consciousness. Right? Actually the very word holiday comes from holy day. Yes? I think we all know that, isn't it? The origin of the word holiday is holy day. That was how it all came about. But now the holidays are being used for the most unholy things. So we had to make our every day as a holy day. So that is every day. So nice to see everybody gathered here, because of course we have practical realities. You have to work, you have things to do, so you can't come here every day to hear class, but once a week at the very least. And when you can't come here, then you must have it at home. Yes, yesterday I was in Leicester, and the topic they gave me to speak on was seeing Krishna in family life. And I was mentioning how, from a purport of Srila Prabhupada, in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says that 4 things are very important for a happy life in this world, and especially happy family life. 1 is that you should chant Hare Krishna. 2, that you should take only prasadam. Not all the time, but whenever you need to eat, you should eat only prasadam. 3rd, you should discuss Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. And 4th, you should worship the Lord, the deity of the Lord, at home, apart from the temple. And these 4 should be done how often?
Every day.
Every day. Yes, every single day. And how many times a day? At least twice a day, Prabhupada said. And all the members of the family should gather together and do it twice a day. I was also mentioning how doctors, when they give a prescription, they usually mention, OD, that means once a day, or TDS, that means thrice daily. And they also mention BD, bi-daily, that means you take the medicine twice a day. So Prabhupada's formula as the perfect spiritual doctor is BD, twice daily, do these 4 things. So all the members of the family should come together and hear and chant about Krishna. And that goes for the larger devotee family as well. So we should also gather. Then we will be able to keep away the miseries of material life. Because as we all know, this place is programmed or designed to be a place of misery. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam, as the Bhagavad Gita says. It's the abode of misery. And in Manchester you've got some experience of that in recent months. Srila Prabhupada quotes a very nice verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by the Creator Brahma. Samashrita ye pada pallavam plavam mahat padam punya yasho murari. Bhavam buddhir vatsa padam param padam 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 yad vipadam natesham. He says, first of all, this material world is a place where miseries or calamities can happen at any step. Padam padam yad vipadam. Vipada means a calamity. Padam padam means at every step. So the nature of this world is that calamities can and do happen at every step. Sometimes there may be small calamities, sometimes there may be big calamities. But miseries are inflicted upon us at every step in life. Misery means an unwanted situation. We want happiness, but sometimes we are forced to accept distress. So that's how this world has been designed. And why has Krishna made this world like this? Why is he so cruel? Why is he so harsh that he has made this world full of miseries, and he has programmed it to be a world where there will be a calamity at every step? Why so? No, it's not that Krishna is cruel or harsh. It's like a loving father who gives lessons to errant children who are rebellious. And the father is saying, look, don't go there, there's trouble there. But the child said, no, I want to go there. a child gets hurt or gets pricked by a thorn or something like that and then comes running back crying. So we are like those little children who want to enjoy life independent of Krishna, the Supreme Lord. And we think that we can be happy like this, but that's never possible. It cannot happen. So Krishna very kindly has given us misery in this world. So misery in this world is Krishna's mercy. Now we may think that's really far out. What do you mean when you say misery is Krishna's mercy? Yes, indeed. Because if there wasn't misery, then we would never have turned to God or turned to Krishna. That doesn't mean we're being escapists. Sometimes people say, oh, anyone who looks to God is an escapist. He's trying to run away from the problems of the world and he's trying to take, God consciousness. But actually we are not escapists. Because to escape means you escape from the reality and hide in something that is illusory. Like when somebody has a problem in life and he's not able to cope with it, he may take refuge in alcohol or drugs or something like that. That is escapism. Because you have a problem in this world which is very real for you because you're experiencing it, and you want to run away from it, you can't cope with it, so you take shelter in something that is false, something that puts you in a state of illusion, whereas it is an illusion. And then this intoxication takes us further and deeper into illusion. But Krishna consciousness is not like that. You go away from the sufferings of the world into a reality. So therefore it's not escapism. Escapism is when you escape reality and go for illusion. But here we are going for the ultimate reality. It's like saying if you're walking on the street and somebody tells you, there's a big ditch there, please don't walk like that, please leave that road and come on this side. You say, no, I don't want to be an escapist. Well, the fact is, if you're not going to leave that road, you're going to be in that ditch and you'll hurt yourself. You'll fall down and break your bones. Say, no, I don't want to be an escapist. Well then, you go right there into the ditch. So that's the way the whole modern society is headed. That is the materialistic way of thinking. Going gloriously into the hellish conditions of life. Free fall. You know what is free fall? Free falling into very miserable conditions of life. So Krishna consciousness is our protection from that. It is our vaccination, it is our inoculation from that miserable condition. Because it reminds us that this is not where we are supposed to be. We are supposed to be with Krishna in the spiritual world, as Prabhupada is mentioning here. It is only because of ignorance and illusion, as Srila Prabhupada says here, that we do not know that this material world is a miserable place where there are dangers at every step. So we take shelter of Krishna, because Krishna is the reality. And beyond this material world is a place of spiritual happiness, where there is no birth, no death, no disease, no old age. It's simply supreme bliss. It's just unadulterated fun and joy. Sounds like a good proposal? How many of you want to sign up? It's free. It's free. Because the first thing we want to know, how much does it cost? Well, it's free. But not actually fully free, because you have to commit yourself in terms of faith. You have to have that faith. You have to come to the association of devotees and hear and chant about Krishna. So this is the reason why misery comes in this material world, because Krishna very kindly wants to remind us, this is not where you are supposed to be. You are supposed to be with me in the spiritual world. But you are here suffering in the material world, the pangs of birth, death, old age and disease. So we have to remind ourselves, yes, this is not where I'm supposed to be. So that is why it is Krishna's mercy, it is Krishna's kindness. If we are in our homes and the home is on fire, and someone comes and shakes us up and come on, let's run out of this house, the world is on fire, your house is on fire. And we say, I don't want to be an escapist. Right? Is that a clever thing to say? When your house is on fire and you've been asked to go out of the house. So this material world is like that. Sansara dava naralita loka. It is like a house that's on fire. It's a forest fire blazing. So many types of miseries and distresses abound in this material world. And here is the ultimate solution that Krishna has come to give us. And we have to take to Krishna consciousness and free ourselves from this bondage once and for all. The bondage of karma is what is being referred to here. Karmajam buddhi yuktahi. Karmajam. That is due to activities in this world which are fruitive. Fruitive activities mean those activities which are performed to get some material benefit. Some money, some material pleasure, and so on. So these fruitive activities invariably result in some reaction that comes to us, either in terms of happiness or suffering. And whether it's material happiness or material suffering, we have to take birth again to experience the results of those activities. So this causes the repetition of birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. And this is the root cause of suffering. So when we take shelter of Krishna, then immediately we experience relief, even as we're living in this world. And of course, once you perfect your Krishna consciousness, then you don't have to take birth again, ever again. That's why the famous verse, the famous phrase, back home, back to Godhead. So we have to chant Hare Krishna in such a nice way, and we have to worship Krishna in such a nice way that it becomes natural for us, that it becomes spontaneous for us. Just as when you're learning to type, or learning to drive, or learning any activity, initially there's always difficulty. You have to practice. When you first started to learn typing on your keyboard, how did you type? One finger, right? Looking, where is this, where is that? A, where is A, where is N? But once you learn the technique of typing, and once you practiced it, then your fingers simply fly on the keyboard, and you don't even have to look down into your keyboard, and you type correctly. That's when you have attained some kind of perfection. It becomes very natural for you. So similarly with Krishna consciousness, it's something that is innate within all of us. It's not something that is imposed. You know, from the famous talk of Srila Prabhupada, Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition of the soul. It is the original energy of the living entity. So what is Krishna consciousness? What is chanting of Hare Krishna? It is simply the natural process for reawakening that love of Krishna which is already within us, which is dormant within us. That is what this process is. If it wasn't dormant within us, it would not have been possible to invoke it, to bring it out. I'll ask you one question. Yes? Now, suppose you are learning to run. So you practice in your school athletics, so you can run better and faster, right? With more practice. Suppose you practice to fly like a bird. Will you be able to fly with lots of practice? Just flap your hands like this and then... No. Will you be able to fly? No? Why not?
Because flapping, you don't have wings.
You don't have wings, right? What else? Basically because the body is not designed for being able to fly. This body doesn't have the innate capacity to fly. But a baby bird, what do you think? flaps, what happens? It learn to fly?
Fall down.
Yeah, but after some time of
Yeah,
practice,
after some time I
it can fly. But we can't.
can no.
Even 50 years of flapping your hands and you still can't fly, right? Yes, that's our problem. Because this body is like that. We don't have that capacity to fly, but the bird has a natural capacity to fly. So with a little bit of practice, the baby bird learns to fly. But we can't. So practice helps only when there is an innate capacity for something. If I wanted to be a musician like Beethoven or somebody, try hard as I might, it's just not possible. Just don't have that innate capacity. Or I wanted to be an artist like, Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci or somebody, I just can't. I don't have that capacity. It's not there in this body, in this brain to have that capacity. Some people have it, some people don't. Or if I wanted to run like, who's the fastest? Bolt, right? Bolt like Bolt. If I wanted to run like Bolt, I may practice, I may achieve a little something, but just it doesn't have the capacity to do it. So we can achieve perfection by practicing something only if that is innately present in us. So Krishna consciousness is innately present in all of us. It's there. It's not something mysterious that has to be imposed on all of us and forced. All we have to do is to fan the spark, and that spark will then become a blazing fire. So Krishna consciousness is there in the soul because the soul is constitutionally part and parcel of Krishna. So we just have to bring it out by practice. That practice is called sadhana bhakti, devotional service in practice. So initially when we chant Hare Krishna, we don't have much taste for it. We chant and we fall asleep. Then when we come to lectures, classes, we like it, but we want some jokes and we want stories, otherwise it's only philosophy, we fall asleep. And we lose the taste for it. But if we practice, then gradually the taste emerges. Then we want to hear, we want to chant, yes? We see that developing step by step, gradually. So this is how Krishna consciousness works. And then the perfection is when this Krishna consciousness becomes spontaneous, becomes natural. We don't have to try. It just automatically happens. Even without consciously doing something or thinking about it, we are Krishna conscious. That's the state that we want to be in. So our chanting of Hare Krishna is like that. We have to aim, we have to practice it so that we naturally chant Hare Krishna. Imagine yourself driving in a car and all of a sudden there's somebody else who comes in front of you, is driving badly, and you have to apply your brakes, emergency brakes, and you narrowly miss crashing into the other car. So at the very moment when that happens, what do you think of and what do you speak? What words will come from your mouth at that time?
God. Oh God.
Oh, that's nice. So God is nice. But sometimes other uncharitable words may come out from the mouth. There's this little joke about this boy. His mother is driving him to work. And so the drive is going on peacefully. So the child asks the mother, "Mother, where are the idiots on the road?" So she says, "Son, they're only there when your father drives." It's like that. So, I don't know if you all got the joke I got. So generally when we get into these situations, we are not so polite. We don't come up, we're not at our best behavior, let's put it like that, yes? So we say things we probably would not like to say at other times. So that's the test. So will you think of something else at that testing moment? What happens there? Even a parrot can learn how to chant. And I did see that when I went to one devotee in New Jersey, the one devotee who had a parrot. in a cage in the house, and they had taught the parrot to chant Hare Krishna. Just like parrots in different homes, they teach them to say different things. Good morning, good morning, good morning. They say like this. Parrot was chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So it was interesting. It was nice that they made the parrot chant Hare Krishna, but I didn't like the fact that the parrot was caged. So I told them, why did you let the parrot free and let him chant Hare Krishna and preach to other parrots? All the other parrots will hear, and confining the parrot to just one cage is not a nice thing, right? Imagine if you were confined just to one home all day long. You wouldn't like it. You want to go out sometimes. But these parrots can also go and preach elsewhere. It can happen. And by association, the birds also can, get transformed. I will tell you a little story which I was telling the other day. There was this group of saints, monks, who were traveling to another hermitage, to another ashram. And they had to pass through a forest. They had some friends, some sadhu friends, some monk friends in the other ashram across the forest. So they had to walk through the forest. So as they were going, they realized it was getting dark. So it was time to find some place to rest, but where would they get it? So they were somewhere on the edge of the forest, so they saw a little hut. They said, here's some place for resting for the night. But it was empty. And then they heard the most vilest abuses being shouted by somebody, screeching, in a screeching voice. And they couldn't bear to hear those words. It was very foul language, and they were just closing their ears. They were all saintly persons. And saintly persons don't like to hear foul language. Any cultured person doesn't. So they were just shutting their ears, and my God, where is this? Who is this person who's speaking such language? And they found it was a caged parrot. And this parrot was uttering the most foul words, going on and on and on. They said, my God, we cannot stay here. We'd rather face the dangers of lions and tigers in the forest than to have to spend the whole night with this parrot hearing all this. Because they may have tried to tell, shut up, and the parrot would have said, shut up, we will repeat it 4 words, it wouldn't have worked. So they said, no, we better leave from here. So they left, and all night they walked through the forest. And finally they reached the other hermitage, taking great personal risk because there were wild animals there. And when they reached there, and they reached the monastery, they found another parrot. And this parrot was speaking sweet words of welcome and chanting Krishna's names and repeating verses from the Bhagavad Gita. They were very sublime. And so these sadhus, these monks were taken aback, and they said, what a strange thing. We just experienced this one parrot at the other end of the forest, and he was speaking such foul language. And here this bird is speaking so sweetly, and speaking about Krishna and speaking verses from the Bhagavad Gita. It's really astonishing. How has this happened? So the monks there explained, well, actually there's a history to this. These two parrots are actually siblings. And what happened is when they were born, their mother died somehow. So one bird was looked after by a hunter who lives in the forest. And so the parrot lived with that hunter. And this other parrot came to us. So because that hunter was always using foul language, so the parrot learned that very quickly because the parrot was hearing it all the time. And this parrot has been with us, and we are always chanting Bhagavad Gita and chanting Krishna's name. So then this parrot has learned this and is chanting that all the time. So this was the difference of how this shows how powerful the impact of company is. Association. If we are associating with people who are thinking of Krishna, who are spiritually minded, who want to become pure devotees of Krishna, then our thinking, our speech, our habits, our lifestyle, everything changes. But if we associate with people who are very materialistic, who simply have a one-pointed goal in life, and that is to enjoy this material world, then we will also become like them. So if we want to become Krishna conscious, if we want to become free from the miseries of this world, we have to get as much association of devotees as we can. We have to expose our consciousness as much as possible to discussions of Krishna consciousness, to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, in an atmosphere which invokes our dormant love for Krishna. That is very, very important. But even though the parrot who was chanting Hare Krishna, but it is not willingly done, not voluntarily done. It is something that's just because the parrots do that, they just imitate. Even then the parrot would get some benefit. That is the power of the holy name. Even if the holy name is chanted without awareness of its glories and its potencies, it is just chanted by way of imitation. Even then there is some help, some benefit to the chanter. You know, many times when our devotees go out in the streets chanting Hare Krishna mantra in the Sankirtan, what we call the Harinams parties, and when they go out and they're singing and they're chanting, playing musical instruments, then many people on the road, they chant in mock imitation. Have you seen that happening?
Yeah.
When I remember in India, there was a Bollywood movie in the 70s called Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. You know, it became very famous. It was a hit. And that wrongly portrayed Hare Krishna devotees as being, you know, drug addicts and so on. So whenever we would walk out, this was in the 80s, whenever, nowadays it doesn't happen because now Hare Krishna is fairly respectable and it's a credible spiritual movement now. But in those days, you know, it wasn't like that. We were considered some kind of weird people. And so when we went out in the street, I remember many times we would get taunted by local people, and they would, you know, they would hold a thing like this, which is what drug addicts do, you know, there's these people, and they would hold this and say, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, they would say like this. So they would taunt us as we would walk by. And because this was so common for us, we would always train our devotees, don't get angry when somebody does that. Let him chant, let him go on chanting. Just smile, give a beatific smile, and just chant, because they're chanting Krishna's names. Even if it is you know, they're trying to ridicule you or make fun of you, but they're chanting Krishna's names. That is the power. Because the scriptures say that even if somebody chants Hare Krishna mockingly, unknowingly even, or in anger, you know, in whatever mood, still the person gets benefit. Of course, the person doesn't get love of Krishna, love of Godhead, but there is benefit. Eventually that person will come to the point where he or she will now associate with devotees seriously, whether in this life or in a future life. So chanting Hare Krishna, even unknowingly, or in imitation, or in making fun of somebody, has benefit. So one can only imagine what benefit there will be if it is chanted with love, if it is chanted with knowledge and faith. How much more benefit there will be. So our chanting, the purpose of giving the example of the parrot is not that we should chant like the parrot. We should chant, but we should be cautious that we don't chant like the parrot merely in imitation. Prabhupada one time gave a very graphic narration of what would happen if a parrot was chanting Hare Krishna and you suddenly went and grabbed the parrot by its throat. Yes? Say Hare Krishna, grab it by the throat, and start cawing again like a normal parrot. It wouldn't think of Krishna anymore. So similarly, he said, our chanting of Hare Krishna should be such that even in the most dangerous circumstances, the first thing that comes to our mind and to our lips is the name of Krishna or thoughts of Krishna. This is what we should train ourselves to do, because the ultimate emergency situation that's going to come up in life is death. And death may not come giving us a notice. Sometimes it may come with a notice, sometimes it may not. But actually the notice has already been given way in the beginning. When was the notice given?
When we were born.
When we were born. Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityu dhruvam janma mritasya cha. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, for one who is born, death is certain, and for one who has died, birth is certain. So anyway, we've been given notice. The only thing that hasn't been told to us perhaps is exactly when we're going to die and how. But the fact that we're going to die is certain. Do you believe that? Sure?
Yes.
One day it's going to happen. So we have to prepare ourselves for that eventful moment. So that when that danger comes, we are prepared, we are ready. So devotee is never afraid of the miseries of life. A devotee is never afraid of even death, because he or she knows that I'll die thinking of Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, and then I'll go back to Godhead. I'll get a much better birth, where I don't have to worry about taxes and about the NHS, and I don't have to worry about traffic accidents and maintaining a home and working in a job. It's blissful, full of happiness in the spiritual world. Be with Krishna eternally. So that is the preparation we have to do. That's the training we have to do. It's much like when you study arithmetic or mathematics. You practice your sums, isn't it? What's the most important thing that's needed for success in your mathematics paper in school? Practice. You keep on practicing your problems, your sums. And you keep on practicing it, it becomes very easy when you have to sit for the exam. But if you don't practice, even if you know it, all students have experience, and we've done it when we were students, make silly mistakes, yes? Make silly mistakes because we haven't practiced enough. So similarly with chanting Hare Krishna, it's a question of practice. Go on practicing, practicing, practicing. One time there was a king, and he encouraged the arts and the culture. He liked to encourage people who had all sorts of skills. And so very interesting people would come, scholars and musicians and artisans, and they would display their skills and their knowledge and so on before him, and the king appreciated that. So one time, one scholar came from a distant land, and he said, "My dear king, I have an open challenge for you or for any of your ministers or anybody in your kingdom. I can speak many languages very fluently. And my challenge is that you or any one of your associates identify which my mother tongue is." And that was a difficult one, because he began speaking so many languages, one after the other, and he was so fluent. And there was no trace of any foreign accent. If he was speaking a particular language, it was as if it was a native speaking that language. And every language he spoke, he was speaking like that. It was a remarkable linguistic skill. There are many people who know many languages, but the accent, you can understand from the accent, that even though this person may speak a certain language, but he's speaking with a different accent, not a native accent. But this person was speaking with the native accent. So everyone was dumbfounded. Even the king was struck with wonder. I've never seen anyone who speaks languages so fluently. It's remarkable. So then he turned to his ministers, and one of them was very wise. He said, "Your Highness, give me a day. Give me a day to work on this, and I'll get back to you with the answer." So then the king said, "Okay, my dear scholar, give us a day, and we'll work it out. We'll understand what your mother tongue is." So then this minister, he called one of his assistants and said, look, I want you to do the following. When the scholar goes to his quarters at night and he's sleeping, you creep into his quarters. Of course, he was basically doing something he shouldn't have been doing. You can't enter into somebody's room at night, yeah, without their permission. But anyway, this was an exceptional situation. He said, get into his room at night and take some very cold water with you and just sprinkle it on his face, and actually not just sprinkle but throw the whole thing on his face. Yes, very cold water. Just throw the whole vessel of water on his face as he's sleeping, and then see what happens. So the assistant did as he was bid. He went there, he had some ice cold water, and so he went there and flung the water on that man's face. And the man woke up in a great huff and he was shouting, what happened? And then he disappeared. The man who had flung the water fled from there. So the minister was waiting for him. So he said, so tell me what happened. He said, as soon as I did, he woke up and he was screaming. So when he was screaming, what language was he screaming in? So then he mentioned that particular language. He said, okay. So the next day the man came to the court and he said, the king said, we have now found out your mother tongue. And he said, this was the language, that this is your mother tongue, right? He said, yes, how did you know? So because when you're woken up in your sleep, the first thing you say, because it comes naturally to you, is your mother tongue. The language that you're accustomed to, that you're most comfortable with. And the scholar said, yes, you're correct. So you have won. That's how, with the help of the wise minister, they were able to understand what the mother tongue of that scholar was. So what is the moral of this story in this connection? Why have I told you this story? What's the lesson to learn in this context?
Krishna's our mother tongue.
Sorry? Sit.
Sorry everybody. My name's Shane. I'm a devotee of Krishna. Krishna, when we wake up, that's our mother tongue. Just like that man he spoke his mother tongue. If we could wake up, or train ourselves to wake up by thinking about Krishna, what a wonderful world that would be.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Shane. So just like that man had a mother tongue, we all have a mother tongue, materially speaking. But our spiritual mother tongue is Krishna's names and Krishna's words. So just as a mother tongue comes to us naturally, and in times of surprise or emergency, that's the word that comes to our mouths, to our lips. So similarly, we should practice Krishna consciousness in such a nice way that Krishna's names will come to our lips spontaneously. So I hope nobody does that now at home. Don't try this on each other. Your family members, throw some water at somebody and see what language the person speaks in or something like that. So family members beware, but yes, the point is that it should become so natural and so spontaneous to us that in the slightest indication of anything, the first thing that comes to our mind or to our lips is Krishna. Yes, we should chant Krishna's names. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a great associate called Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and came to Jagannath Puri, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was reputed as a great scholar in the court of the king of Puri. But he was an impersonalist. He didn't believe that God is a person. He didn't believe in the process of devotional service to Krishna. Rather, he believed that we should, by the practice of speculation and austerity, we should become God. We should merge ourselves into the impersonal spiritual effulgence. So that was his philosophy. And he was a brilliant man. He was a genius, extremely scholarly. But he had the wrong philosophy. So eventually he said, you know, this young man, I would like to train him. He's a sannyasi, but he's very young. He's only 24 years old. I would like to train him in the Vedanta philosophy. So he begins to get the right concept of the absolute truth. The absolute truth is impersonal and so on. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard him for 7 days, continuously, didn't speak a word. And eventually Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked him, "You heard me for 7 days and you never asked me a single question or uttered a word. So it leads me to understand, it leads me to think that you don't understand what I'm saying. Is I've understood perfectly what you said, but I can't understand your imaginative and false interpretations of the straightforward verses of the Vedanta and the scriptures." And then Mahaprabhu began to speak the devotional conclusions. And so sublime and convincing were his arguments that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, by his mercy, became a devotee. He became not just a devotee, but he became an extraordinarily pure devotee and an intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One day when Mahaprabhu went to his house early in the morning, after taking the darshan at Mangalarati, way early in the morning in the Jagannath temple, he knocked the door and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had been sleeping. He was in bed at that time. But he could hear the sound of his bed creaking and him waking up, rising from the bed. And he could hear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saying, "Krishna, Krishna." And he was extremely happy to hear that. He was standing outside the door, but he could hear Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya muttering Krishna's names. And Mahaprabhu felt great bliss. Then now, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is spontaneously chanting the names of Krishna. So for us, we should also pray and practice that our chanting should become like this, spontaneous, natural. It comes to us at all times. So we have to practice. The first thing we rise in the morning, we should chant Hare Krishna. When you wake up in the morning in your bed, what's the first thing you do? Very first thing.
Open your eyes.
Open your eyes. And what do you do? First thing after you open your eyes. A little small thing. So water on a lotus leaf is like that. It just comes together. So when a lotus leaf is in the water also, the water doesn't stay. It remains aloof from it. It's untouched, so to speak, even though it's in the water. So similarly, even though we are in this material world, which is a place of suffering, a place of misery, but we have developed, or we have not developed actually, it's developed by Krishna, but we have accepted and agreed to inoculate ourselves with Krishna consciousness. So we become immune from the infections of this material world. So this is the perfection of our life, so we can be happy when we're living, and when we leave this world, we will go back to Krishna's kingdom and experience eternal joy in Krishna's company. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
If we leave the material world and go into the spiritual world, what about the people that are left behind?
Okay, good question. If we go to the spiritual world, then what about the people who are left behind? This is the question coming from a compassionate heart. And that is exactly how our devotees think. Yes. So therefore, we are keen to deliver as many people as possible in this world and to spread this Krishna consciousness movement everywhere to one and all. So every man, woman, child, and even animal, bird, insect will get delivered. So we can't be selfish that only I want to go to the spiritual world. We have to be compassionate to all the suffering souls in this world. I remember one devotee, he used to go, when he became a devotee first, he would take his friends and go into the forest nearby, where there were lots of trees, and he would chant Hare Krishna very loudly. His friend asked him, "Why do you bring me here to chant in the forest loudly like this?" He said, "Because I want to deliver all these trees. These are all living entities. they're also suffering here in this material world. They are caught in this body of a tree. Enormous suffering. They can't do anything to relieve themselves of their distress. At least we can do something. If you're hungry, you can eat something, find yourself some food. If you're tired, you can find yourself a bed and sleep. But the trees can't do anything. So he said we have to deliver the trees. So in this way, the Krishna consciousness movement focuses on spreading the holy names of Krishna to everybody. So everyone can go back to Godhead. Nice spirit. But we also have to become perfect in order to help others become perfect. We have to continuously try to progress in our Krishna consciousness. Right? Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Can by chanting Hare Krishna mantra completely resolve our negative karma from previous lives? In this life?
Okay. Can chanting Hare Krishna completely remove the negative karma that we have from this life and from previous lives?
Yes.
Yes, completely. But not immediately. It takes time. So we have to work hard in chanting Hare Krishna. Then everything, all our negative karma will get destroyed. And we'll be free and completely clean, so to speak, from a spiritual point of view, and become eligible to go back to Krishna's kingdom. It's a good deal.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I just want to say, someone asked this question before, how many lifetimes does it take to go back to Godhead? And the answer given was 3. One, when you get rid of the anarthas. The second, you reach a further state. And third, you're with Krishna.
Your question is how many lifetimes does it take to reach Krishna? And you heard that it takes 3 lifetimes. Yes? One for getting rid of the anarthas, one to become a pure devotee, and the third to be with Krishna in some pastimes. There is no hard and fast rule like that. It can take any number of lives, or it can happen in an instant. Just like if there is someone doing a college degree, a university degree, they can do it in a condensed period by working hard. A 3-year degree could be done in 2 years. Or they could take 7 years, 8 years to do it. Depends on how seriously they apply themselves to the degree. So similarly, depending on how seriously we apply ourselves to Krishna consciousness, we could go back very fast, or we could take life after life. If we want a diluted version of Krishna consciousness, then it will take longer. But if you want the real thing, and we're really strongly doing it, then it will take a very short time.
1 lifetime.
Yes. So let's make it for this life. Why should we wait for another one? Right? Agree?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In 6th Canto Prabhupada, he says very strongly that advancing Krishna consciousness is not dependent on your external circumstances. Can you say something more?
Progress in Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
The question is that Srila Prabhupada mentions that progress in Krishna consciousness is not dependent on your external circumstances. What does that mean? It means that there is no material circumstance that is an impediment to your Krishna consciousness, in the sense that you could be poor or you could be rich. Doesn't matter. You can become Krishna conscious. You could be sick or you could be healthy. You could be a learned person or you could be an uneducated person. Doesn't matter. You can still become a pure devotee of Krishna. You could be from one caste, creed, community, nationality, ethnic group or race or whatever, or from another. It doesn't matter. You can become a pure devotee of Krishna. You can be tall or short, thin, fat, whatever you may be. You can become a devotee. So there is no material impediment. Anyone can become a devotee of Krishna and perfect his or her life. That's the purport.
The substance of that, Maharaj?
Sorry?
The substance of that?
The substance of that?
Yes. What we should learn from that?
What we should learn from that is that whatever our material situations will always keep changing. Because every day presents its new challenges to us in life. Yes? Today we have one problem, tomorrow another problem, yet another challenge. Circumstances keep changing. But our Krishna consciousness should not change. We should not waver in our Krishna consciousness despite changes in our material circumstances. A businessman may sometimes do very well and may have a year where the business is not doing well. So the circumstances may change. But we should remain steady in our Krishna consciousness regardless of our material circumstances. That's the purport of it all. Yes?
And does devotion to God only come by His grace?
Does devotion to God come only by God's grace? Yes, but it also depends on our sincere effort. Lord Krishna's grace is available for everybody. But we also have to put our effort and sincerely strive for it. Then the grace will come. You know, I don't know how it works here in the educational system, but in India, you know, if the pass mark in a particular subject is, let's say, 50 out of 100, let's say, and if you've got 45 marks, then it's possible that if the examiner is in a good mood, the examiner could give you another 5 marks and pass you, and that 5 marks is called grace marks. It's grace. Grace meaning mercy. Okay, you've done a good job, you've tried hard, you know, you've got 45. And you need 5, otherwise you lose the whole year, so we'll give you 5 marks, grace marks. But if you have 2 marks out of 100, then the examiner is not going to give you 48 marks to pass. Right? So in other words, you have to do something. You can't just say, well, I've done nothing, I just depend on grace. No, the grace is there, but the examiner wants to see that we have done something. So we're somewhere close, we're struggling, Krishna sees that we are struggling, then he will say, yes, now this candidate is the right candidate for being the recipient of my mercy, my grace. Right? One time Srila Prabhupada told a funny story about this. That there was a student who was appearing for the history examination. And he had studied well, but now he hadn't studied the whole syllabus. He had studied certain selective topics. So whenever there was a question on that topic, on those topics, he answered well. But there were some topics he hadn't a clue. And one of the questions, he had time remaining in the exam because he had only answered some of them. And there was a question about a particular king. He had never heard about this king in his whole life. And he had to describe the rule of that king. So he thought, I have time. And even though I haven't heard about this king, well, what's the harm in writing something? So he began to write. And he wrote, and wrote, and wrote, page after page after page. And the remarkable thing about this was that not one word in all these pages made any sense. Right? Not one word was a proper English word. He just wrote any combination of letters, he put them as words, and he filled up a few pages. In other words, it was unadulterated, pure nonsense. Yes? And he filled up the pages like that. So then the examiner was reading the answers. Till then it was very good. Then he came to this answer. He was thinking, my word, what is this? And he looked at it, and not one word was from the English dictionary. But he had filled up page after page. Initially the examiner was angry. But then he sat back. This student has really worked hard. How much effort he has taken to write so many pages of nonsense. So much energy required to write. And plus, it requires a lot of intelligence to speak nonsense continuously. Even the most foolish people sometimes speak some sense. But to speak nonsense consistently, always, is very difficult. When we were children, we used to play a game. The game was, if I remember right, I play a game with you and I speak a sentence and I have to speak a nonsense sentence, right? It doesn't make any sense. And then you have to speak a nonsense sentence and we couldn't. We ended up speaking, some sense. Or you had to, and let's say I spoke one sentence and you had to speak a sentence that was completely unconnected with my sentence. And then I spoke something that was completely unconnected with your rapid fire. It went on and on and on and on. And then eventually we ended up speaking something that was connected to what the other person said. It's not easy to speak nonsense all the time. So this person had intelligence and he had put in effort. So he gave him some grace marks. So Prabhupada told this story about our condition. So we are, fallen conditioned souls in this material world. But what do we know? We are afflicted with so many frailties and so many weaknesses. And for us to become pure devotees is so difficult. But at least we should try something. Not that we should speak nonsense, but the point is, we should struggle, we should show Krishna our effort that I'm trying, Krishna, something. Sincerely I'm trying. I'm not up to it, but I'm depending on your grace. So when Krishna sees the sincere struggle of the devotee, then he gives his grace. Otherwise it's a disgrace or something. Yes, somebody had a question. Yes.
I just wonder, Krishna consciousness is all we are craving for or we are aiming for. But how, suppose somebody is actually Krishna conscious, how would that person behave in their day-to-day life?
Okay, if somebody is Krishna conscious, then how will he or she behave in day-to-day life? Good question. It was also Arjuna's question. Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha. He says, a person who's transcendently situated, how does he speak? How does he act? How does he sit? How does he walk? Now, the Acharyas explained that Arjuna's question is not merely a literal question. Meaning, how does he sit? Meaning, does he sit, this way or that way? That's not the question. How does he lie down? The question is, what are the activities that the person engages in? What are the activities the person abstains from? What are the areas that are areas with the person, or the topics that the person likes to hear and likes to speak about? How does he behave? These are the questions. So similarly for a Krishna conscious person, how would such a person behave? One time Srila Prabhupada was asked this question about who is your devotee? And Prabhupada said, my devotee is a gentleman. Or a lady, as the case may be. So a devotee will always be well behaved. Above all, a devotee will be chanting Hare Krishna, will be remembering Krishna, will use his or her time as much as possible to serve Krishna in different ways. So if one is Krishna conscious in one's activities, it's easily visible. So that's how you can understand. If somebody is always thinking of Krishna, speaking about Krishna, then you know this person is Krishna conscious. What is in the heart has to come out as well. So we will know. It's very easy to identify a person who is addicted to Krishna. So that's what we're looking for, Krishna addicts. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Yes, Shane.
Hare Krishna. I may ask a question. In the beginning, opening part, you spoke from Bhagavad Gita, and in that verse, you described the place of no pain and misery. Well,
Place
go
of?
maybe back to Godhead.
Yes.
I haven't been looking for you, that's paraphrasing. And I just wanted to ask you this question, in your opinion. Do you think all that lot of pain and misery life, do you think they're all loving Krishna? Do you think they're all serving Krishna? I just wanted to know what you think about us to get up there. Can they all do that?
Could you repeat that again, please? Sorry.
Okay, in the Bhagavad Gita.
The last sentence? The last two sentences?
The last sentence would be,
Yep.
would you say, in your opinion, that they are all loving Krishna, they're all serving Krishna, they're all good servants of Krishna? Obviously, I know you don't know that question because, of course, you haven't been there. So,
Where? In the spiritual world.
That's right.
So your question is, in the spiritual world, are the devotees there pure devotees? Yeah?
So, about what I'm saying, yes. Do you think they're all like that?
But then they're serving Krishna and enjoying with Krishna.
Yeah, are they serving themselves, sir? Or are they serving Krishna?
In the spiritual world.
That's why I'm asking.
In the spiritual world. Yes?
In the level above, because in the books I read, there's an automatic level above which we should be aspiring to. I just wondered what it's like up there.
You see, every living entity in the spiritual world is a pure devotee of Krishna. What's the proof? The proof is that they are there. You can't be there unless you are a pure devotee. There is no entrance into the kingdom of Krishna, into Krishna's abode, for one who is not a 100% pure devotee. No one else can enter. Yes, so if we want to get a visa to go to Krishna Loka, then we also have to become like that. We have to follow in the footsteps of those exalted souls.
It's wonderful to know that there are such beautiful people up there.
Yes. And we are trying to follow in their footsteps, all of us as devotees. So it's an exciting, adventurous journey.
Beautiful path to walk.
Yes, indeed. So let's all walk towards that together. And for starters, make the whole of Manchester Krishna conscious. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.